Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Africa We Deserve, taking back power over our lives. Every Sunday, we go live with our friends, our colleagues, and our closest partners for a complimentary talk to showcase what they are doing in the world to build the Africa we deserve. And today, I have a good friend with me, Mrs. Elizabeth Glenn from the U.S. Africa Collaborative. So please, Mrs. Glenn, tell the world about the U.S. Africa Collaborative, what it is, and how you are changing Africa.
Well, wow, that was a tall order, changing Africa. But first of all, let me thank you for providing a platform for discussion to talk about the Africa we deserve. It's such an important topical right now because we know that Africa is the future. And that really is the impetus behind the U.S. Africa Collaborative, of which I am proudly the chair emeritus. It is an organization that came together through friendships, through relationships, like-minded colleagues in the housing and human settlement space that came together through the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials. I have to give them a shout out because were it not for them, I probably would not have met my dear colleagues from South Africa. And through those relationships, we started talking about, well, what if? What if we could bring Black folks together? What if we could bring the diaspora together? What if we could have different approaches to housing and human settlements? What could we do to lift up the Sustainable Development Goals promulgated by the UN in 2015? What if we can take the power of our relationships and create a more sustainable, more equitable world? And so, as a gardener, I know that planting the right seeds is important. It's also equally important that we provide them with the care and attention and the nurturing so that we bring forth plants, before we bring forth life. But we also bring forth flowers, which we know as gardeners, those flowers become the seeds for the next crop. And so exponentially, gardeners know that each season brings about increasingly more harvest, bigger harvest. The U.S. Africa Collaborative is actually trying to harvest the seeds that we are planting through the relationships we are building. We started our work in South Africa, and we talked about bringing people together across the housing and human settlement sectors because so many of us operate in silos. So it was important for us to bring in a diversity of partners. But the overriding push to bring the diaspora together in recognition of the disconnectedness of African people globally, recognizing the importance of bringing us together, like bringing the family together, reconnecting those connections that got severed by the slave trade, by oppression, by migration, by forces that were external to the lives of the people in our diaspora. And so how do we connect? How do we get back with each other? How do we build these bridges across the diaspora so that innately we can talk about those qualities that make communities and human settlements both sustainable and resilient, with equity being the true lens that we look through, because this disconnectedness that Black people feel across the globe has dispossessed us of our ability to create the type of wealth legacies that other groups have been able to do because they've kept those connections intact. It is now time for us, through the U.S. Africa Collaborative, to attempt in a small way to start building those bridges and to repairing those connections and using our collective strength, abilities, talents, and brilliance, because that's what we're harnessing. Here, we are harvesting the brain trust of some incredible individuals who come from universities, who come from government, who come from nonprofit organizations, who come from the private sector. They're architects, they're engineers, they're builders, they're teachers, they're doctors, they're nurses, they're people who care about people. Because at the heart of all that we do in building these connections, it's about building the humanity. So that's the collaborative. That's how we sort of came together. We want to
It's
be
wonderful.
panelists.
So, what's on the horizon for 2025?
Wow.
So is there a Pan-African symposium that you're planning? Say more about the USA Collaborative Pan-African Symposium in 2025.
So yes, we are building on 2 successful symposiums. One that was held virtually in 2022. It originated out of Durban at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. This past year's event was held at Bowie State University, and it attracted a great diversity of people, a large number of people from South Africa. We had a robust delegation. For 2025, we're taking everything that we have learned from those 2 symposiums and creating the Pan-African Symposium and Exposition, so that we're not just looking at sort of the wonderful world of research, which is important, but our goal is to connect the theory, the knowledge into grounded, practical projects. How do we bring the practitioners together with the researchers and the academics? How do we engage students with the real live experiences? And so for the 2025 Pan-African Symposium and Expo, we are pleased that we are not only partnering with U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we're adjacent to their innovative housing showcase that they put on at the National Mall in June, which actually shows several building types. So we're looking at innovations in building, and as our organization, and we look at next year's Expo, innovation will be at the heart of what we are looking for in terms of presentations, papers, abstracts, posters, demonstrations, speakers, but still with the lens of sustainability and equity. And so we just published a notice that we're about to open the call for abstracts, papers, presentations, and posters. That will be coming out October 7th. We are working on the location, where that location will be. We know it's going to be in the Washington area, as we're partnering with HUD. We're very excited about that. But we're also excited that we're going to be hosting a couple of design competitions, so that we have 2 international competitions, one that will focus on bringing teams together to submit proposals, design proposals for a specific location that will be identified in Baltimore City, of surplus property that potentially could turn into a real project. And then we're also looking at partnering with the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials, International Research and Global Exchange Committee, to host an international indigenous design competition, paying respect to indigenous people globally, particularly within the African diaspora, which includes the United States. And hopefully we will bring both indigenous projects, but in projects that are designed by indigenous people. So we're very excited about that. We will also be sponsoring a Latin Caribbean forum as part of our activities, because we want to truly unite the diaspora. And when we look south of here at our cousins who are descendants from West Africa, who are in Brazil, and they're 120 million strong, clearly the largest group outside of the African continent that's in the diaspora, we know it's time to bring the cousins together. And that's how we feel. We're bringing the cousins together to build our communities that are respectful and welcoming to us. So that's what's on. That's what's up for the next expo that we're looking forward to putting on. We hope you'll be a part of it.
Absolutely. The International Institute is absolutely a friend of the U.S. Africa Collaborative. So for rural communities, what does the USA Africa Collaborative have in store for rural communities in Africa around sustainable settlements, creating sustainable environment, sustainable housing for rural communities in Africa?
I'm glad you asked that question, because one of the things that we have really looked at is this connection between urban and rural communities, and recognizing that we've put a wealth of resources into urbanization and protecting our urban spaces, but what we've not done a very good job at is preserving and protecting those rural communities. And as I just mentioned, the Indigenous design competition, one of the things we think will happen is that we will have some projects that will come out of rural communities. We see rural communities as a great way to test the smart villages concept, where we work with local Indigenous leaders to plan rural communities that meet their needs, because not everybody wants to live in a city, in a compact, dense environment. So we want to look at how can we bring AI, artificial intelligence, this digital economy, and this digital approach to pre-development and development, so that we can actually bring the kinds of communities that will make sense in rural areas, so that we're looking at the availability of water, how we can create sanitary wastewater situations, how we can make sure that they have access to health care. And one of the things that we're looking at, even within our membership, are people who are looking at how do we improve access to health care. They're looking at telemedicine, digital kiosks, and ways to increase access. One of the things that we can do in terms of the rural smart villages is to make sure we have those health access connections in place. We know that the smartphone is not only our vehicle of communication, but is also how a large number of Africans on the continent access financial services, how they connect to resident services. And so that platform is critical, and we see that as an important tool as well as we deploy smart villages concepts into the rural communities. One of the things I'm most proud about is that we are about to engage in an MOU with the Global Connective Center, which is headed up by Major General John Wharton, who's a retired R&D commander at Aberdeen Proving Ground. This man knows how to build bridges, build roads, build housing, but he also knows how to provide for the defense and cybersecurity around the world. And so he, after serving our government,
Wow.
he's now looking at building green communities around the globe. And so we, along with Ilima Digital Foundry, which is founded by Karsten Popp, who used to be a big Autodesk guru in Europe and Asia, he is bringing his AICP digital AI-informed construction platform to bear, so that we are building smarter and we're using artificial intelligence for good to make sure that we know who the people are, what the land is like, what can be built there, how we can finance it. And all of these techniques and methodologies can be used in rural communities. But this center, this MOU that we are entering into will create a center for excellence in smart villages and sustainable human settlements. And it will be a brain trust that will launch a variety of initiatives that will be available not just for urban communities, but for rural communities. And we're looking at stuff like, fintech, looking at healthcare and access, and looking at economic development. And one of the things I like to say, we talk about workforce development and giving people job skills. I say, let's create job creators and not job seekers, because that's the way we're going to solve some of the unemployment problems. And the Center of Excellence can certainly be working towards creating those kinds of best practices where entrepreneurship and harnessing the brilliance of Africans in the space that they can be comfortable in. And it just means making those connections to make it happen.
Absolutely. That's so wonderful. You are truly the USA Collaborative, really building the Africa we deserve. Often, Mrs. Glenn, I'm in the DMV, you're in the DMV, and I hear, why do you focus on Africa so much? There's a lot going on in America. There's Black folks in America that are suffering with housing issues. There's a housing crisis. So what's the intersection, Mrs. Glenn, between the infrastructure needs of the Black communities globally? Like, make the connection for folks so that people can understand.
So let's be real. America's housing crisis has been fueled by racism. And that means our land use policies, our zoning, and our planning efforts have all been centered around keeping people separate. Talk about rural communities. We got Black folks in rural communities who have no access to healthcare, to education, to Wi-Fi. They're not going to be a part of that digital economy. But America has a problem. We have a dire need of affordable housing, but also housing in areas that are not environmentally toxic to its residents. And if you look at the morbidity and mortality rates of Black people in the United States, Black and brown people, and the communities that they have been marginalized into, if you don't have money, you are going to be living in a place that's been pretty much predetermined for you because of zoning, because of what you can afford or not afford. And let's be real, while we have the Housing and Urban Development, which provides funding for public housing, housing choice vouchers, and a variety of other services around housing, it is not nearly enough. And what we don't talk about is that the housing crisis in this country, we talk about affordable housing as a crisis, but the truth is housing is a crisis in this country. And the real estate development market, the housing market, drives our economy. We look at the success of our economy based on how many housing starts we have, because we know that the materials, the labor, the jobs that are created, they all create to contribute to the circular economy. But until America really grapples with some of the issues, because we got people who get housing choice vouchers, and after trying to find a landlord that will take them, 6 months later, that voucher will expire. So how are we going to address that? So one of the things that we need to do is to kind of partner with folks and start driving that bus ourselves. So how do we as Black folks create and fund development entities and development structures and create those plans that will make communities more welcoming, more affordable, and more accessible for services and benefits that will benefit Black folks and brown folks? And let's face it, white folks in this country, particularly if they're poor and living in rural areas, are suffering just as badly as any third world country. And if folks don't want to believe that, I've got some places I can show. So I'm hoping through the collaborative that we also
truly moving on here. This conversation is always, anytime I spend time with you, it's always so enriching. So much I learned, so much. So we were often, people say, let's talk jobs, but I heard you say earlier, let's talk creating industry. Let's talk creating entrepreneurship. So this digital economy is the focus of the youth, is the focus of the future. How will the USA Collaborative looking to create pathways for economic development opportunities, entrepreneurship, so that people on both sides of the continent, Black folks globally, can create this ecosystem of entrepreneurship and be employers instead of job seekers?
Well, that is going to be a challenge. It's going to be the challenge of the future, but it is a challenge that we must rise up to and address now. And the reason I say that is that, we know that here in America, that the majority of jobs that are in this country are created by small business. And so one of the things that we have not done well is to help provide support for small business development in Black and brown communities here in the United States. In Africa, which, believe me, I believe is the future of the global economy. You have some of the most talented, creative, athletic, wonderful, brilliant people. And it's a young continent where the median age is less than 40, which means we have a lot of young people whose intellect, energy, imagination, creativity, we can harness, not in just being the ideal employee, but in creating those businesses. One thing the pandemic taught us, we talk about the gig economy, but give people the ability to be freewheeling and creative and provide them with a little bit of incentives, they can create all kinds of businesses. Right now, I am in awe of some of the technology that young people in Africa are doing. There's a young woman in Cameroon who's creating young Black women how to code. She's trained 3,000 young Black women in Cameroon, one of the poorest countries on the continent, how to code. I mean, look, not only are they going to be employable, but let's just hope that they also form their own companies that will provide jobs and support in Cameroon. Those are the kinds of things that we would like to support and bringing people together, because one of the things I know the strength is bringing us together and sharing those resources and sharing that knowledge. So we want to help do that. We are hoping, partnerships are everything, but we are hoping to engage in a strong partnership with the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and look at how we can make some economic impact and how we can create entrepreneurship programs for young people. And not only that, look at the real agribusiness opportunities that are present on the continent. They're exporting food to other countries while they're having to export wheat. They can grow it there. And so what will it take? And how can the U.S. help play a role in supporting the creation of agribusiness and a more robust export and import trade on the continent? Because clearly, just about everything the world possibly needs can be found on that one continent. Ask China, ask Russia, ask the Arab Emirates, and ask North Korea, who are all jockeying for position on the continent to take advantage not of their workforce, but of their minerals, of their resources. You want to build a road? Sure, build a road. Let me mine your land. And let me bring our people in so that your people never learn how to do this. That needs to change. So I hear there's a group called Women in Mining in South Africa. Wow, you talk about power. We need to harness that. And I think one of the things I'm looking forward to, Maryland is developing this MOU with KwaZulu-Natal. One of the things they are interested in is youth entrepreneurship and looking at how do we engage young people. Because again, it's not about teaching them how to look for jobs that may not be there for them. Because let's face it, we still do have issues with, can I say the dirty word, colonialism and racism? Those two words, they come together. So the collaborative in building its relationships hopes to be able to showcase best practices that can be replicated throughout the continent and in the United States. Because we can't possibly believe that we have a lock on all the best ideas in the world, because that's why we are no longer number one in anything except the military, folks. Everybody else is taken over in the places that used to matter. Quality of life, education, healthcare, the environment, renewable energy. Those things we are lagging behind in while the rest of the world is passing us by. We got to do better than that. I'm hoping that young people in America will demand accountability and say, why aren't we doing as well as Scandinavian countries or even European countries or even some Asian countries when we have so much? But maybe it's so much invested in a few hands. We got to change that, people.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the International Institute partnering more closely with the U.S. Africa Collaborative. So I will shamelessly put a plug there that there is investment opportunities to get yourself invested with the USA Africa Collaborative because they are doing good work. They're doing amazing work in Africa, and they need your support. They need your time, your energy, and your dollars, your connections, your resources. So, Mrs. Glenn, here we are at the close of the show. We often hear what's wrong with Africa. But I like to spin that. What's right with Africa?
What's right with Africa is that the timing is perfect for them. When you look at, while we might see some political unrest going on in some countries, understand that the result of colonialism is that a people must fight and struggle in order to create the type of governmental structures that will empower their people and bring about peace, calm, and prosperity. But we don't talk about what's right
And what's right about the continent of Africa and the African diaspora is the amazing people that make up Africa. The people who have demonstrated and competed on a global stage. So when you look at them in the Olympics, when you look at them in the fashion world, when you look at the music world that's all so vibrant all over the continent, when you look at the technology that's being advanced by young people, they just need the investments to make it sell, to make it sold, to make it real, to make it fired up. We have in that country, as I've said before, every single resource that we need in this globe, from being able to create the new batteries of the future to be able to create the new superfoods that will feed a population. What's great about Africa is its youthful population. All over the globe, the so-called civilizations, Western civilizations, countries, or those that emulate Western civilization, are going through challenges because their population is not only declining, but their fertility rates are declining. And so when we talk about aging populations, we're talking about China, Japan, United States, Germany, United Kingdom. They are not able to replace themselves because family sizes have gotten smaller. And so in 20 to 30 years, as generations start trying to figure out how they're going to go into retirement, they're not going to be able to because they don't have enough young people. Africa has more than enough young people to fuel this world. We have to make sure, though, that they're taken care of and that they're given the advantages that they need so that they can be as creative and as brilliant as they have the potential to be. I tell you, one of the things I am so impressed with is the number of young Black PhD students and young Black PhDs who are doing postdoctoral work, all focused on the betterment of their continent. What the continent has to do is keep them there. Stop sending them over here to us. Keep them there and grow that continent. And I'm not saying don't send them here for education. We do have some good university systems here. But make sure that talent is going back to build the Africa and the future that they so richly deserve.
And I would also add a plug when you come to an HBCU.
I'm sorry, I missed your question.
When you come to an HBCU, come to I said, and when Africans come to an
that's
HBCU.
Right. Morgan has its doors wide open. Bowie State University, Coppin State University, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. You want to talk about environmental science programs? The continent is dealing with climate change issues and environmental challenges. Come to UMass, but come to some of the richness. We've got just down the road in the DMV, the top HBCU in the country, Howard University, which played a critical role in forcing America to disinvest in South Africa during the time of apartheid. Don't forget them. And that's one of the things that we hope to feature and highlight in our Center of Excellence. We want to make sure we are reaching out widely to HBCUs to be a part of this brain trust. And by the way, that brain trust and talking about Africa, one of the things that we're hoping to do, I've got a colleague on the board who is looking at using AI to do an analysis and an assessment of all the skills, abilities, talents that are present in the 150 people that we call the U.S. Africa Collaborative, so that we have an inventory of those skills so that we can then, again, use those. So when investors come to us and say, listen, we're interested in doing this particular project in Rwanda, and it's a project that's looking at agribusiness. Who do you have in your membership that has the skills and the talents and the license and the gravitas to be able to do that? How can we deploy them? That is power right there. And so we are so excited about being able to categorize and collect, particularly our members that are on the continent, and assess and inventory those skills so that we can then begin to broker those skills back out to help solve problems wherever those problems need to be solved. That's one thing I'm truly, I'm excited about all of it. But I think that, this brain trust, we need to, we're going to harvest it, and we're going to create opportunities for example, one of the things we just signed up with the state of Minnesota to be a vendor to Minnesota State University at Mankato so that we can offer guest lecturers in their construction, building, and management program, because they can't necessarily pay international teaching staff, but we can, and we can deploy them to Minnesota State. We can also do that same kind of thing to other universities to provide this type of talent to their teaching schedule. Anyway, in my mind, there's a lot that's right with Africa.
This is wonderful. This is wonderful, and we definitely will come back.
Perfect.
We'll have a longer conversation. Maybe you'll be joined by more membership.
I'd love to do that.
You'll be joined by more membership of the U.S. Africa Collaborative.
I'd love to do that. I'd love to feature some of them. They're doing some exciting things in their own right. We want them very much involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I always like to say, what's right with Africa is you, Mrs. Glenn. Thank you for your family. Thank you for your life. Thank you for being born. Thank you for your commitment, for your service, your passion and dedication. That is what is right with Africa. Thank you for being here and doing all that you do, and partnering with the International Institute, for being a good sister, a good friend, a good auntie, all the things necessary in order to bring what we need forward. I don't know how that got there. This is how it is.
We love technology, but it has its burps. It has its burps and giggles from time to time.
We love technology,
but I appreciate you.
Technology does not work sometimes.
I appreciate you, Miss Green, because
thank you so very much.
You are raising the bar.
I appreciate that.
And you are. I appreciate you, and I look forward to working with you on just about anything imaginable.
Thank you. You're pretty magical yourself, and I'm super excited about the work that the USA Collaborative is doing. Again, for our listening audience, there is opportunities to get involved with the USA Collaborative. I would say get involved not only with your time and volunteering, but share your resources, share your connections, get invested, become inspired by the great work that's happening on the ground, both in Africa and what the USA Collaborative is doing here. Visit their website, get to know them, set up a few meetings, have some conversations, because the USA Collaborative is building the Africa we deserve. Until next time, everybody, we'll see you soon.